It was Thanksgiving when my grandfather came to visit us. We haven't seen our grandparents for 2 years since our last visit, me and my siblings, Eric and Brianna, to his place. My grandparents were so happy every time we came to visit them. For an old man, my grandfather had a unique hobby. He collects action figures. The collection includes the Power Rangers to the Thundercats. But the interesting part is, grandfather always took his favorite figures with him wherever he went, including when he visited us. When Grandpa entered our house to stay for the weekend, my mom smiled at him. Mother smiled too much. Mother is the person who always looks the happiest in the world, in my opinion. He is like bringing light to gloomy days. Not only for me and my brothers, but for everyone around him. But he didn't come with my grandmother this time, and my grandfather walked into the house with an uncharacteristically blank look. He looked like a corpse. He didn't even greet or even say hello. He was just walking with a bag in his hand. Mother asked grandfather where, Mother. Grandpa just replied he's gone for a while. This made my mother confused and curious. I can see from his expression. Mom still kept trying to ask about grandma, but grandpa quickly brushed it off, as if that was not a good subject and should stop talking about it. Finally my mother gave up, thinking that they might be having a husband-wife fight that she didn't want to discuss. Normal problems in the household, which my father and mother also had. Grandfather looked over at Brianna, who was asleep on the couch, and grinned in horror. In all my life, I have never seen a grandfather's cynical smile like that. Interesting how easy it is to see someone sleeping, he said. Grandfather and my mother moved into the kitchen, where I finally greeted my grandfather. Hey Grandpa. Where's Grandpa? He didn't answer, but just looked at me here. What happened to my grandfather? Why was he so unpleasant as on his previous visits? But I tried to ignore it and look for other subjects. Endled quote, what's in your bag, Grandpa? Again, he gave the same look as before, but this time he answered. Just some replicas I just found. He unpacked his bag, which contained less than what he usually carried. Instead of the 10 or 12 action figures, in replica form, that he usually carries around, there are 2 action figure replicas that are very old and shabby, also look horrible to me. I took the 2 figures. The size was slightly bigger than the figures that belonged to my grandfather that he usually carried. It's almost the size of grandfather's arm. At first, they look like replicas of action figures or figures in general, but what felt odd was that I had never seen that character on television or in stores or anywhere else. One looked like an old man, his face was dirty and his lines were hideous. He is seen holding a relatively small dagger and wearing a brown robe. While the other character also has a face with almost the same details, this one is holding an axe. His face was almost entirely covered in dirt and he wore nothing but big pants, was bare-chested, and carried an axe in one hand. Those 2 little statues are the scariest replica statues or figures and the like that I've ever seen. But, aside from that, I'm starting to enjoy playing with both of them. It crossed my mind, a feeling that can't be explained, the feeling of wanting to own and keep them. I looked at my grandfather, ready to ask him where he got these figures. But when I was about to open my mouth, I saw his facial expression change again. Grandpa looked as if he was in a rage looking at my hand holding the figures, then looked at me. I saw a fire of anger in his eyes. Give them back right now. Right now. I was surprised to see it. But then Grandpa started attacking me, kicking me to grab the figures. I became so scared and shocked, then I dodged backwards, dodging Grandpa's attack. My grandfather knelt down, as if he had given up on trying to grab the figures, then the next moment he fell to the floor. My mother tried to reach grandfather. Then Grandpa clutched his chest, and sputtered with difficulty for air in a terrifying manner. My mom called 911, but Grandpa died before the ambulance arrived. He had a heart attack. The next day, Grandpa's funeral was held. We didn't contact Grandma because until now we didn't know where Grandma was. So, the funeral took place without him. But even when we were going through grief, my obsession with these figures increased rapidly. I wasn't particularly interested in the old male figure carrying the axe, but I liked the older male carrying the dagger more. My brother Eric, apparently, was interested in the axe-wielding figure, so I gave it to him. Wherever we go, we always take our figure with us. When I played around with my figure, it somehow felt like it gave something to my soul. I can't explain that. Anyway, the figure gives an eccentric sensation as well as happiness. The following month, everything changed. I'm starting to get annoyed with that old figure. Somehow I felt him starting to look at me with dangerous eyes which, for some reason, kept me awake. I know, I should throw that figure away. But I can't. I've tried several times, but my heart always wants to take that figure again. I can never really throw it away. Even though that figure has given me nightmares. Unnatural nightmares. A dream about someone looking at me when I'm sleeping and trying to kill me, while the others surround me. In my dream there was only me alone. But often I dream, I'm looking at my mother and sister who are sleeping. I just stood, doing nothing. Just standing watching them sleep. Me and that old figure but in human form. But everything is too real to be called a dream. This nightmare is scary for me. It turned out that my brother also had a dream like mine, of course with his axe figure. My brother just resigned and helpless, just like me. And we started to keep our distance from our younger sister and mother. Our only choice is silence. One night, I woke up from my sleep in a state of shock. I looked around my room to make sure there was nothing in mine. But I feel my sheets are wet and cold. I fingered the wet area. And I think I need to tell my mom. I got up and immediately saw the figure of my old man. I felt better not going anywhere without him, but I couldn't find the figure where I had placed it. I'm confused. It feels so strange I left without taking him. But in the end I decided to still go to my mother's room. I stepped slowly into my mother's room, the door slightly open. I walked to his bed. I gently shook his body, trying to wake him up to tell the embarrassing thing I had done. When it was 3 a.m. and the room looks very dark without any light or light. I tried to stir her up again, but Mom still didn't wake up. Then, you realized something was wrong with my mother. My mother is also wet. I immediately looked for the light switch and immediately turned on the light. The sight that shocked me was laid on my mother's bed. Mother lay helpless, her body cold, and blood flowing from every puncture hole in her slain body. I saw myself, her hands were full of mother's blood because I touched her earlier. My mother's body is full of deep cuts. While around his neck is an old male figure holding a dagger, mine. I took the figure and removed it from my mother's neck. The figure's dagger glistened with blood under the lamplight. I just stood scared. Most people scream when they're scared, but I can't, don't know why. I couldn't even get the sound out of my throat. I froze, shivering with fear. I saw my mother's corpse, and sat beside her. Then I glanced at the figure that I had removed from my mother earlier. As usual, a strange feeling enveloped. An eccentric and exhilarating feeling. It's nice, isn't it, to see someone sleeping? I took my figure and walked slowly to Eric's room. For some unknown reason I felt compelled to do something for him. I have to. I sneak into his room. When I got there, I saw Eric's bed. I saw a mound on his bed, which was none other than his body. He was sleeping soundly and his body looked stiff. And I saw him sleeping for about 2 hours. All that time I just thought, it's nice, isn't it, to see someone sleeping? It's almost 5 in the morning now, and I'm still watching Eric who's asleep. Then I heard a voice that sounded like the voice of an old man. "Cut him, Nicholas, cut him." Without thinking twice, with my hand holding the figure, I walked over to Eric's bed. Then I pulled the dagger from the grip of the figure I was holding and stabbed it into the mound on the bed that was my sister's body. However, it felt soft, unlike a body. I quickly opened the mound and was surprised to see that Eric was not in his bed. It turned out that it was just a mound of pillows and bolsters deliberately made to look like someone was sleeping. I looked at the mound of pillows, wondering what is happening and what will happen next. And then looked at the figure in my hand. "What have you done to me?" Suddenly I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and found Eric walking towards me. The moonlight shone on the bloodstains on her face and on her nightgown. I saw something crushed in his arms, something that was badly torn to pieces, namely the body of our sister, Brianna. I looked at him again. He just stood blankly staring at me. Then walked towards me. "I thought we could party tonight," he continued flatly, and placed Brianna's deformed corpse onto his bed. Through the look in Eric's eyes, I got the same strange feeling I got from my figure. Eccentric and exhilarating. I started to smile coldly at Eric. Eric replied back. Then, without being commanded, we said in unison, "It's nice, isn't it, to see someone sleeping?"